Welcome back to Deluge Part 2. We're going to be continuing where we left off. I'm actually starting on the title screen because we were getting a ring on the doorbell, and it was very annoying to hear. So let's go ahead and load back into that. Yeah, it's kind of annoying if I was trying to record an intro. I awoke to the furious ringing of the doorbell. Yeah, it's very furious. As I hurried downstairs haphazardly, dressing myself en route, I wondered for a second why my father wasn't home. He was a notoriously light sleeper. Oh, hey, how's it going? You here to bother me about doing that news article again? When I opened the door, I was greeted by a familiar face. She appeared far too excited to take her finger from the bell. I mean, she looks pretty, pretty chill. I don't think she's very excited. Please stop pressing that. The article, have you done it? I want it at the publishers by tomorrow. I don't even think we've started on it, to be honest with you. My semi-dormant mind was digging fruitlessly. The weekly progress article, did you write it like I told you to? Tomorrow, I promise. Tomorrow. Yeah, we're not gonna get it done. At the early hour, I didn't have the presence of mind to throw up a fight. Better not be late. But never mind that, I just received notice that our cover article has set the city council alight. It turns out that the farm assault wasn't an isolated incident. Mayor Linden has been receiving signals of worker mistreatment throughout the year leading up to the murder, but he failed to act in a meaningful way. Then last year, the incident occurred. And now that the police investigation has come up with nothing, council members are beginning to openly question the mayor's efficacy. Efficacy? I have no idea if I'm pronouncing that. Efficacy. Thank you. Do you realize our publication could cost him his career? Most of her words flew straight by me, though I remember her eyes burned bright like meteorites on that pale Wednesday morning. We should really be getting to school. Okay, so she does actually go to our school. The way she dresses, the way she talks, just makes it seem like she's way older than us. On our way to school, Ina wouldn't stop lecturing me on the various intricacies of the municipal government. The trip had never felt so long. Voices within the mayor's own party are pushing for him to step down. They consider the incident a telltale sign of his continuing incompetence. Members of his own party? Wouldn't that be counterintuitive? Well, it's complicated. Abbott Island Reformed, commonly referred to as AIR, is the largest party in the town council. Its electorate consists of farmers and members of the church. But with its size comes interdivision. Of the 8 seats the party currently occupies, 4 are held by members that represent the agricultural sector. They generally come from agrarian families, I still don't know how to pronounce that one either, and serve as advocates for the farming enterprises. The other 4 seats, however, are held by the Cooper faction. These are members of the church, mainly descendants of the original inhabitants of the island. The current leader of the Cooper faction is John Cooper, Rika's father. Oh, okay. Whatever happened to the separation of church and state? Ina pressed on, ignoring my remark. Yeah, it seems like religion's a big thing here. I don't really know how well that would go down. Even though they're in the same party, there's tension between the Cooper faction and the agrarians. The Cooper faction has always tried to implement a strictly isolationist policy for the town, letting in as few outsiders as possible. Dang, so we wouldn't even be allowed in. The agrarians, however, rely on outside labor during harvest season and generally more welcoming towards newcomers. The current mayor of Abbotsford is an agrarian, so the Cooper faction is weaponizing this affair in order to strengthen their position within the party. Politics. AIR has always exerted undisputed influence over the town's administrative efforts. You can tell their power has never been contested by an actual free press. I believe there's much more to be uncovered on this matter. I'd like you to ask Rika out on a date. Oh, we're back to this. No, I don't want to do it. Suddenly, I was wide awake. I have absolutely no intention of doing that. Thank you, Abe. I'm glad you're on my side. Oh, we'll see. Is that a threat? She's threatening me. She's like, I'm gonna make you go on a date with her because, it's gonna give us an in on all this information. We arrived at school early. I'm going to head up to the office to change into that terrible uniform. I'll see you in class. Suddenly, she dove behind me as though she was hiding from something. She began to speak in a hushed voice. Look who's here of all people. There, go talk to her. Gosh, you are so childish, Ina. I thought you were an adult, okay? And now you're proving me totally wrong. And with these words, she slid into a nearby entranceway. Well, I will admit, though, so far, Rika's probably been one of the more normal people, even though she seems to be very sympathetic towards Cthulhu and Leviathan and creatures like that I wouldn't be super sympathetic towards. But, you know, besides that, she's pretty normal. Abe, what a pleasant surprise. I hope you've been settling in nicely. I see you're a part of the Early Bird Club. Yeah. We practiced with the swimming team on Wednesday mornings. There's a big championship coming up soon. Oh, that's cool. She ran her fingers through her long black hair. I'm so glad you're getting involved with the school paper. Personally, I don't really read it, but my father was absolutely lyrical about the cover piece you ran in the last issue. He can't stop gushing about how much student journalism has improved over the last years. I laughed incredulously. All credit goes to Ina. I just see to an, timely delivery. I mean, we're also doing that other article, but, you know, we'll see how that goes. Well, he said your paper is an asset to the town. Come on, there's time left before classes start. Let's take a walk over the school grounds. Okay. I don't know, maybe she's gonna fall for us, and we don't even need to ask her out. I mean, that would be okay. I guess that would be a better alternative than us asking her out, but we'd still be using her, I feel like, so I guess that's not a good solution either. So you know this place used to be an island, right? I was aware of that. It's the Isle of Abbott. I nodded. In the early 1800s, it was home to a community of about 400 fishing families. Life was tough, but they made an honest living. Periodically, storms would rage through Abbott Bay. The islanders protected Abbott against the water by erecting long barriers built out of wooden poles. But during storms, the barriers suffered, and the islander would have to rely on donations from the mainland to restore them. In 1858, a highly turbulent year weather-wise, the Elizabeth flood swept over the Low Countries, leaving a wake of annihilation behind. Part of Abbott's fishing fleet was destroyed, most of the barrier washed away. Not much later, the government announced the full evacuation of Island. I think it's supposed to be up that island. But, you know, I'm not the one making the writing here. The inhabitants were to be rehoused on the mainland. They said it was due to the increasing threat of storms and the infeasible cost of restoring the wooden barrier. I mean, it sounds pretty expensive to begin with, so I would imagine repairing it or rebuilding it would be just as expensive. However, some suspect that persistent poverty and inbreeding on Abbott played an equally important role in the decision to evacuate. Doesn't sound like a very fun place to live. She smiled a mischievous smile. So in the end, the island was left deserted? Not really. Yeah, I'm sure there would still be people here. A group of 200 islanders stayed behind, all hardline members of a small reformatory congregation. The Church of Abbott had recently been ejected from the mainstream branch of Low Country Protestantism. I'm so bad at pronouncing these. These were troubled times, theologically speaking, and church schisms were a common occurrence. I will say, though, this game has an incredible backstory. There's so much information about this island. It's very interesting. Anyways, the seceded congregation vowed to remain on the island. The government did nothing to stop them. For close to a century, they lived isolated lives with very little contact with the outside world. Until reclamation of the marsh polder began in the 1940s, Abbott suddenly found itself floating on a sea of fertile soil. Farmers from the mainland migrated to Abbotsford to cultivate the fields. But the original inhabitants of Abbotsford, descendants of the islanders who seceded in 1858, observed the influx of newcomers with sorrow in their eyes. There has always been tension between the two groups. The farmers work hard, but they're blind to our heritage. Okay, I mean, I get what you're saying. You're just saying the new people coming in don't really observe how this island came to be and the customs and the culture of it. A grave expression appeared on her face. The islanders are honest people. They never cover up a crime. Gosh, that low-key scared me. The bell for first term rang. We headed back towards the school. I will say, though, Rika is very passionate about this island. She knows quite a lot, more than most people would know about their hometown. By the time we made it up the stairs, classes had already started. She turned to me. You know what's interesting? After the Elizabeth flood, Abbott was never struck by a storm again. So the entire evacuation had been for nothing? You could say so. Some of the more self-righteous members of our congregation speculate that the floods were punishment by a higher power. That there was no more need for them. After all, subversive elements have been extracted from the community. The kingdom of heaven is like a net cast into the sea that gathered fish of every kind. When it was full, the fishermen hauled it ashore. Then they sat down and gathered the good fish into vessels, but cast the bad away. Anyways, I have to go to class now. I absolutely love talking to you. That's funny, because I'm pretty sure... Yeah, like, the way she says it, I absolutely love talking to you. It wasn't talking with you. It was talking to you. Also, I was wondering... She paused for a second tenderly when winding her hair around her finger. Would you mind going out for dinner this Saturday evening? My parents are attending a wedding, and I'd hate to eat alone. Okay. See, she's asking us out. We didn't even need to do anything. We just needed to let her talk at us, and then she's like all over us. I could detect a hint of anxiety in her voice. Alright, do we join her? I'd be glad to if I survive my paper round. This town has restaurants. I like the second option because that's funny. Like, this town has restaurants. But I think the first is probably more accurate to how I would feel. So we'll go with that one. That's great. I'd love to learn more about you. Well, good, because I learned a lot about this town. Not really much about you. And you didn't really learn much about me. We just had like a history lesson before school. I was struck by the candor of her sudden proposal. So struck that I had no choice but to agree. Even though I realized I was playing directly into Ina's plans. I know, that's the worst part of it all. I'm like, I have no problem going out with this girl, right? But it's like, I don't want to give Ina the satisfaction of me following her plans, you know? Then it's a date. See you next Saturday. With a nod of her head, she said goodbye. Ina pulled me aside the moment classes ended. She seemed nervous. So? I shook my head in ignorance. I don't know what you're talking about. What did you manage to get out of Rika? I didn't really get anything out of Rika. I mean, nothing personal about her, but I got some history lessons. Or she complimented you on your journalism. I'm gonna say that, because that sounds snarky. I love it. Yeah, she would, wouldn't she? I don't know what's more funny. The fact that she thought she would actually say that. I don't know. Like, that's it. That's hilarious to me. She bought it. That's great. I'm so happy. So tell me what you guys discussed. Oh, I know why that's especially funny to me. Because in the last episode, if you remember at the end, it gives you like a score on how well you did. And I seem to do really well with Ina. Like, I got like a perfect with her. And I have no idea how. Because I've just been really sarcastic towards her. And that seems to be working. And I have no idea why. But I'm okay with it, I guess. It's fine. So tell me what you guys discussed. We literally discussed the entire history of this town. Like, that's pretty much. Though I still had vivid recollections of Rika's coiling hair, I had to admit the peculiarities of our conversation this morning had long since faded to the back of my mind. We talked about the town for a bit. I mean, that's pretty accurate. I thought for a second. She said the Isle of Abbott was evacuated in the 19th century due to inbreeding. Does that make sense to you? What are you trying to imply, Abe? Are you trying to imply that Ina's inbred? Because that would be hilarious. I'm really mean to Eden. I don't know why. Like, I just am. It's just, she's a person you want to be like a little sarcastic to and just make fun of. Sure, they were ravaged by storms at the time. Only a small community remained, including the Cooper family. Or Cupper. Is it Cupper? Like, am I pronouncing that wrong? I've been saying Cooper, but I'm like, I don't know. Maybe it's Cupper. I'm just gonna keep saying Cooper. Hopefully you guys will forgive me if I'm wrong. Well, then I don't think she told me anything of interest. I should be the judge to that. Alright, you want a history lesson? Because I know the entire history of this town. In 1958, they did something about that barrier, okay? I don't know if that was when they built it or if that's when they left because of the floods, but that shows how well I remember things. An awkward silence lingered. The newsroom was a mess. Every inch of floor space was filled up with boxes, newspaper clippings, scattered pieces of clothing. Yeah, you need to clean up in here. So, Ina, I was wondering... What? When will you introduce me to the other editors on the staff? She flinched. It's not a school paper. I never said it was. We have got other editors, but they mostly work from home. Yeah, it's probably you and your pen names. It's not like I could write everything myself. I appeared to have hit a nerve and began to regret my line of questioning. I dug through my mind to find something to cheer her up. You know what? There was something strange Rika told me this morning. What? Something about a church schism just before the island was evacuated. She was a little vague on the matter. As expected, Ina appeared unnaturally interested. A schism, you say, in the Church of Abbott? Rika said it was the reason some of the islanders stayed behind. I'm gonna be honest, I don't even know what a schism is. Ina had begun browsing her phone while a soft murmur trickled from her lips. A church schism? That seems highly unlikely, if only. There, I found something. It's called Theological Inquiries into the Congregation of the Church of Abbott. Is it relevant? Some more typing. I'm not sure. It could be. Inquiries were a big deal in the Reformed Church at the time. They could point towards corruption or severe theological divergencies. The thing is, the Church of Abbott and the Cooper family have always held a pivotal position of power in this town. Her eyes were glowing. Any dirt on them, old or new, will surely cause a stir, much more than any aberrant migration pattern of insects ever will. I mean, that is kind of suspicious, but... She turned her attention back to her phone. There it is. They have a copy in the Municipal Archive of Bremersburg. That's less than 20 minutes away by train. We'll go there on Friday. On Friday? Don't we have school on Friday? Oh, but this is more important than school. Yeah, screw school. Let's go. And besides, we get a lot of time off for mandatory club activities. Ah, okay, you're using a loophole, huh? Yeah, this is totally for school activities. As we headed downstairs, I noticed she was trembling with excitement. Let's head over to my house for now. I want to run some ideas by you. I wasn't in the mood to protest. Dang, we're already going to her house. What the heck? I didn't know we were that close. Look, she has the, that bowl, that sauce. Babe, what's that sauce called? The one that has the bowl on it. It has the bowl, the picture of the bowl on it. Bulldog? Yeah, what is it called? Yeah, but what brand is it? The Bulldog Tonkatsu sauce. My wife's got me. And they got some soy sauce right there and some other stuff I cannot recognize. Her house had a well-kept appearance to it, sterile almost. As she led me into the living room, I noted a hint of sadness in her eyes. After prying, she told me her mother was touring at the moment. She was a famous conductor, Mina Mengelberg, currently serving at as the musical director of the Vienna Philharmonic Orchestra. That's a mouthful. I told her I had seen her name on a playbill once when I still lived in the city. Dang, so she's like famous. Okay. Dang, you need to liven up this room a bit. Who is that picture of? And you got like some interesting pictures up there. You need like, I mean, you got a little bit of color in this room, but this is kind of boring. This is my room. Dang, how are we getting to her room already? Like, what's going on here? I hate it though. Empty houses give me the creeps. That's why I'm usually at the office. She produced a large book from her bag, the same one I had seen her reading at school. I'm reading Oswald Spengler at the moment. Untergang des Abendlandes? I just totally butchered that. I promise you I did. I haven't made it past the second chapter. She folded it open to a page that she had marked with a slip of paper. A boundless mass of human being flowing in a stream without banks, upstream, a dark past wherein our time sense loses all power of definition, and restless or uneasy fancy conjures up geological periods to hide away an eternally unsolvable riddle. Downstream, a future even so dark and timeless. Such is the groundwork of the Faustian picture of human history. She closed the book and handed it to me. Modern man's yearning for infinite progress is Faustian in nature. Spurned by his endless aspirations, humanity involuntarily seals its own fate. I'm gonna be honest, guys. Am I the only one that is like playing this game and feels like this is like going way over my head sometimes? Like I feel like the level of intellectual knowledge in this is a little bit higher than my pay grade. I mean, I hope I'm not the only one. Like, or if you do understand everything that this game is saying so far, like, maybe you'll have a greater appreciation. You know, I still appreciate it otherwise. We had left the natural state far behind. We couldn't even return even if we wanted to. Being has been altered irredeemably. I'm sorry I dragged you down here. I know you're not really interested in this newspaper business. It's just, I talk in myself whenever I'm catching on to something great. If I don't have someone else to talk to, it drives me insane. I gave her a reassuring nudge. I guess you know my predicament. She smiled. You know, I have a feeling this church piece is going to be big. Bigger than anything we've done before. Bigger than the Sanford House event. What's that Sanford House event you keep talking about? Okay, I was like, have they explained that? Because if they did, I don't remember. It was out before I realized what I was doing. Didn't I tell you? Our expose on the Sanford House event was our finest hour, the scoop that truly put the Sunday Abbott on the map. Oh gosh, we're gonna have to hear about it. It was around this time last year when the Evening Mirror, a smutty tabloid, published a series of compromising photographs of an influential Abbotsford politician. The photos were taken outside a notorious Bremersburg cabaret club where he was being courted by an dancing girl. That's a light way of putting it. I also find this game very interesting. Like, look, she's like a cutesy anime-looking girl, and then look at this, like, serious, like, well, you know, drawn guy. I think it's very interesting. The politician in question is named Leopold Marquis of Abbott. To be precise, a member of the nobility. He still holds a seat on the Abbotsford City Council. Leopold hails from the old lineage of Lords of the Isle. He has quite a reputation as a party animal, and for that reason, the incident initially blew over without much of ado. But 4 months later, we received an anonymous package at the office. It was another set of photographs, placing Marquis Leopold at a lavish party inside Sanford House, one of the oldest mansions in Abbotsford. There was more girls present during this occasion, and the Marquis appeared to be fully inebriated? Inebriated? Don't know what that word means either. In a note, the anonymous source explained the Marquis Leopold had been carrying classified documents with him on the night he attended Sanford House. But after the hedonistic party, the source wrote, his briefcase and the documents it contained were nowhere to be found. We ran an absolute bombshell of an article. Apparently the Marquis had indeed lost classified policy papers on that fateful night. To make matters worse, he hadn't notified the council of their disappearance. Ooh. Got some gossip. That's some good information. It became a lot harder to forgive the Marquis' descendant escapades when the political integrity of the community was at jeopardy. The Cooper faction initiated a charge declaring that the Marquis' conduct was unworthy of a Christian political party. They had a field day with the whole affair. I think that's kind of a interesting thing, a Christian political party, because I feel like religion isn't like a huge part of politics, and at least it shouldn't be, you know? It's okay if you're religious and, you know, you're in politics, but like, that's interesting, the idea of a religious political party. A little sus to me. So did Leopold lose his seat over this? He didn't. He's an elected official after all, and is therefore protected by the Constitution. However, his position with heir has become precarious since the affair. I doubt he'll return after the elections. So most likely he's going to get voted out. He's just not going to get, like, removed from office before then. She stopped abruptly, looking down, then up at me again. I'm probably boring you. No, I mean, that was kind of interesting. I mean, that's kind of the vibe I'm getting from this game, is like there's a lot of, like, history about this town, which is cool. I mean, you're building a lore, you're building a world. I like it. It's okay, you should be on your way home. I'm gonna read some more Spengler before going to bed. I mean, I like that we got a little more like closer to Ina, I guess. It was kind of nice. We got to know her a little bit more in a different light. She seems like she's someone very interested in like politics and what's going on around her, and maybe a little bit about history. I spent most of Thursday afternoon loitering around town trying to find something or someone to write my weekly progress article on. Oh yeah, weren't we supposed to have this done? Sadly, as I searched in vain, it began to dawn on me why Ina had unloaded this piece on me. Abbotsford really didn't have any progress to report. Then a flash in the corner of my eye. Oh gosh, not the stupid dog again. No, move away, hellhound. I'm not even working today. Pyrus, leave the man alone. As soon as Miss Voorhees entered the scene, the dog became as docile as a lamb. Hi, Karen. Thanks for coming to rescue me again. I feel like he's warming up to you. He didn't even bite you this time. He just barked at me viciously. So what brings you here today? Ina's making me write an article. It can be about any person or any event in town. The thing is, it's due today. You wouldn't be referring to the Weekly Progress, would you? That's a local favorite. Oh gosh, she knows about it too. Ina must have put a lot of faith in you to entrust you with such an important piece of journalism. Oh yeah, she had a lot of faith in me. It's not like she just didn't want to do it. I could tell she was concealing an impish smile. Anyways, if you want, you can interview me. It may help my re-election if I get some positive press out. Maybe you could write the whole thing for me. Yeah, just write a good article about yourself. I don't care what you say. You could say like, yeah, you're the best or whatever. I don't care. Freaking, as long as I don't gotta write it. Come on, let's go somewhere else we can talk. So what exactly is she running re-election for? She let out a long sigh. This is a nice restaurant. I like it. We got a little bit of a nice view out there with the trees. Small town politics can be a headache. Oh yeah. The piece you guys published last week, to be fair, it caused quite a bit of commotion. She adopted a more serious demeanor. Let me state first and foremost that our party has always been a proponent of free exchange of labor. Abbotsford has some of the largest farms in the region, so come August, there's always a huge demand for seasonal workers. What party are you in? Abbott Island Reformed. Laborers come here from all over the Low Countries, many even from further afield. The work offers them an escape from poverty. It's in our greatest interest that they're treated well. The thing is, not everybody is as welcoming towards outsiders. Over the last year, a new political movement had been growing in membership. Flocko 5, they're called. They were founded in 2005. Oh, okay, that makes sense. Flocko 5 takes a more cautious stance on labor immigration. They claim that seasonal workers constitute an unnecessary burden on our local infrastructure. There was a small incident, not long after their party was founded, in which a group of farm workers had been caught stealing food from local stores. Oh, I mean, that's kind of a problem. It was just petty theft, but Flock really went to town with it. They managed to convert the incident into a large electoral windfall. Do you think people from Flock 05 are behind the murder? No, and I don't want you writing that. It's just that this subject matter is more complicated than it seems. Arrow's always protected the rights of all farm workers, but the general attitude has been shifting lately. What about the Cooper faction? The Cooper what? The Cooper faction in your party, what's their stance on labor immigration? I'm afraid you're misinformed. Arrow is one party, we don't have factions. She began speaking in a hushed voice. Look, I understand you guys feel involved. I'll tell you more, but you'll have to consider it off the record. Don't worry, I just have a tape recorder and I'm recording all of this conversation. I'm just gonna post this straight. Like, I'm just gonna write this word for word, okay? No problem, I have more than enough material as is. This is a very painful incident for our mayor. The farm murder occurred on a property that belonged to his brother. I nodded. Now, several voices are implying that the police investigation into the abuse was intentionally halted by Mayor Linden and the chief of police. But I know the mayor. He wouldn't do such a thing. After the assault, the victims' co-workers returned to their hometowns. They weren't available for further questioning. Police closed the case because they really didn't have any more leads. And the mayor's brother? What kind of person is he? I'm not sure. She paused. He works his people hard, a little too hard at times, but he's not a sadist. Or a sadist. It is sadist, right? Yeah, I'm pretty sure. He wouldn't do that to anyone. Anyways, I really need to get back to work. If you guys want, you're welcome to come over to my place for coffee sometime. I can imagine Ina would love a source inside the council. Ina just loves all and any information that has some kind of dirt on somebody. I feel like that's her goal. It's just to write dirt about people. We left school during lunch break. Outside of commuting hours, the train to Bremersburg only ran sporadically. We had to rush to make it in time. Well, this is nice. I loved your article. She appeared reluctant to admit it, like a child enjoying broccoli. At its flaws, of course, it's just, I never thought about using the Weekly Progress section that way, for actual journalism. Yeah, I mean, you're a paper. I mean, I would assume most of your stuff is for journalism. I just happened to bump into Karen. We shot past miles and miles of farmland. Ina had begun murmuring in herself. I haven't seen any bees this year. There were a few last year, but none this summer. It's just crickets now. You know they kept me up last night? The crickets in their maddening song, like 1,000 voices crying out in terror, as if they can sense their impending death once winter comes. If winter ever comes. Honestly, if you're bothered by bugs, never go to the south. There's 1,000,001 bugs. I shrugged. I spoke to the archivist on the phone. He confirmed that the publication should be there. It's part of a larger collection of church inquiries that were commissioned by the Presbytery of the Low Countries after the secession of 1834. The Reformed Church has always been prone to schisms. In 1834, however, 3 congregations seceded at once out of the dissatisfaction with liberal tendencies within Reformed theology at the time. During the subsequent decades, many more churches followed in their wake, to the point where the remaining pastors felt the time had come to take action. The Reformed Church is an essentially coordinated institution. Due to the particular state of affairs, however, the remaining pastors agreed to converge in what was named the Presbytery of the Low Countries. The Presbytery resolved to rout out churches that appeared to stray from the mainstream Protestant theology. By proactively excluding troublesome congregations, the church hoped to enter the broader trend of insurgency once and for all. The document we'll be consulting is a church inquiry commissioned by the very Presbytery. It pertains to the congregation on Abbott Island, led by the Reverend John Cooper. It would eventually lead to their expulsion from the Reformed Church. This all took place in 1857, not long before the evacuation of the island. That's right, because it was in 1858. Is John Cooper? Yes. Her great-great-great-great-grandfather, if I'm not mistaken. It's a lot of greats. You might say he's pretty great, huh? Alright, I'm sorry. That was a bad pun. We made our way towards the archives. The city was noisy as usual. I will say, though, and I've mentioned this in the last episode, I think this game has awesome CGs. Like, I really love it. Like, there's a CG, like, for each transition. I think it's a great thing. I think they're doing a wonderful job. But anyways, I just wanted to point that out. Wrapped in the sound of countless invisible cars, each attempting to find its way in the chaotic post-war street plan, it appeared completely amorphous to me, like an amalgamated collage of leftover parts of other cities that lacked any single differentiating feature. Also, can I just say that the writer loves to use, like, crazy words? Like, I don't even know the meaning of these words. Like, if whoever wrote this, like, genuinely knows each of these words off the top of their head, like, good for them. Like, they're a smart person. Let's just say that. Municipal archives were curated by the University of Bremersburg. We made our way through a few galleries of natural history exhibits until we reached the library. Gosh, look, another nice CG. This looks like the library. If you've ever seen The Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya, this really reminds me of that library. It looks a lot like it. Without as much as looking around, Ina went up to the archivist and asked him for the document she was looking for. He eyed her up with a bemused glance in his eyes. So, you're the students that made a reservation for the theological inquiries. Sure, is there a problem? He chuckled. Oh, not at all. It's just that we don't get many requests for these dusty church annuals. He left briefly to dig up an old book. Here it is. It isn't available for loan, so you'll have to consult it in one of our reading tables. Okay, I mean, that's fair enough. It seems like it's probably an old piece of history. Probably shouldn't be lending that out. We sat down. From the moment she opened the heavy, leather-clad book, a musty fragrance poured forth from its yellow pages. In a hushed voice, she began to read. Journal of the Reverend Thomas W. H. Backer, Inquirer for the Presbytery of the Low Countries. Saturday, 19th of September, 1856. We set sail early in the morning to favorable winds and quiet waters. Aboard were the captain, Jan H. M. Bourne. What's up with your very long, middle names? And his 2 crew members, a traveling merchant, some islanders, and the gentleman Marcus P. Braschart. Chart? I don't know. Who would be serving the island as a replacement school teacher. You're excused to read silently if you want. Let me skip ahead a bit. With the good south wind behind us, it took less than half an hour to catch at first sight of the isle in the distance, but as we approached Abbott, we struck harsh and impetuous waves, and whitecaps formed around us. Within a matter of minutes, the formerly peaceful sea had erupted in a fierce tempest, rocking our ship to and fro. That doesn't sound fun. Though as we as passengers were distraught by the sudden onset of the storm, our captain reassured us that the sudden gales were not uncommon on the Strait of Isle of Abbott. But as I lay cooped up in the ship's stern, I prayed fervently for our safe voyage. There appeared to be no end to the tempest. As I had cleared view of the firmament of my hiding place, I began to notice that the storm was imbued with a strange quality of sorts. For although the sea was in unruly turmoil, erupting in waves and eddies of violent fervor, the sky above remained blue and completely devoid of wind. It was as though not a gale, but a submarine vortex was kicking up these crashing waves. And when I gathered the courage to look overboard, I fancied at times I could see a thin black ripple coiling through the waves, glistening whenever it broke the surface in the ever-dazzling sun. It took us the greater part of an hour to reach the harbor, but when the ship finally moored, the tempest abruptly came to a halt. In a matter of minutes, the waves disappeared and the sea returned to its original calm, as though no storm had ever laid hands upon it. Scores of islanders had spilled from their houses to congregate around the pier. Immediately, I could discern the tall figure of Reverend Cooper, with his chalk white hair that appeared to glow against the black of the cassock, standing with outstretched arms as if to bless the ship. She read silently for a while. Thomas stayed at the manse, where the Cooper family provided him with food and dry clothing after his dire journey. He describes Reverend Cooper as a dignified gentleman. He takes special note of Johan's daughter, Hendrika, a charming though secretive young woman with flowing black hair. Then skips over to Sunday morning, when Thomas will first attend the service on the island. I attended Sunday service next morning. Observance proceeded in great solemnity in commemoration of 2 fishermen who had succumbed to the sea last week. The sermon contained many nautical themes, alluding to both the calling of the fisher and the beast Leviathan. However, I believe this to be nothing out of the ordinary for seafaring communities. Honestly, he was talking about seeing what, like a black coil? Or he saw something in the water. I wonder if that was some kind of beast. Because, you know, that's what they seem to be implying with this game. It's a Lovecraft story. All Monday morning, the 2 men conversed together, delving deep into Cooper's religious teachings. Let me skim through this part real quick. After what felt like a century, she looked up at me and began reciting. What I have come to learn is worrisome. I can only conclude that Cooper's theology, in its essence, lacks the Gosh, what is up with these words? How am I supposed to pronounce this? Eschatological underpinnings of our shared faith, substituting these core tenets with a view on historical redemption that is cyclical in nature. For Cooper, the New Testament culminates seamlessly into the book of Job. Excuse me, I was about to say Job. It's Job. Leading all of biblical history, including the synoptic gospels and the new covenant, to recur again and again ad infinitum. Based on our conversations, I am inclined to agree with the complainant that the creed that is proclaimed on this island is fundamentally alien to the doctrinal axioms as set forth in the canons of Dort and the Heidelberg Catechism. I'm even inclined to doubt Cooper's worldview is fully Trinitarian. After luncheon, I refused myself for an afternoon walk in order to meditate on our conversation. As I made my way across the perimeter of the isle, looking out onto a glittering endless sea, I couldn't help but notice I was being trailed by a dark figure. I turned around just in time to catch a glimpse of Hendrika leaping behind one of the gargantuan stones that lied across the isle. I called out, asking if she would care to join me, but she let out a shrill laugh and ran away, with her black hair tailing behind her. Kinda weird, but okay. Ina pulled a concerned face. That's strange. There isn't much more to the report. He skips over a few days, then recounts the last meeting with the 2 men had on Friday evening. I'm now confident to write that the Reverend Cooper and I have reached a mutual degree of understanding. Cooper has further clarified his theological positions to me, and I'm fully confident that now that his doctrines are wholly in accordance with the 3 forms of unity, in no way contradicting our shared Reformed confession. I believe Cooper is a fine man who operates as a good shepherd for his congregation. Our prior misunderstandings appear to be derived from my own ignorance of local cultures and customs, not from any fundamental unorthodoxy within the religious teachings of the Church of Abbott itself. In conclusion, I therefore recommend that no punitive or expulsory action is taken against the Reverend Cooper or his congregation. Well, that sounds a little suspicious. Only because there's that big gap. and then he totally came to a different conclusion that he originally had. I mean, obviously you could just say he was really focused on like finding the truth, but it seems weird that he was so detailed and then didn't end up writing about what everything that changed his mind. It just said like, oh, we came to the conclusion that, you know, what I thought was a little bit different, you know, and that it seems to be in line with the right teachings. Well, that's a little strange to me, but he put the book down. That's strange. Did you notice anything? Sounds pretty tame if they got in trouble for this. I'm sorry, I wasn't listening. Gosh, this reminds me of maybe like a Persona game. I know Persona can be pretty snarky too. I'm gonna put the second one. I'm gonna be a little bit more serious here, okay? It does, doesn't it? And a sudden change of tone at the end. I don't understand. The sources state that the Reformed Church of Abbott was ejected based on this report. However, the conclusion doesn't point in that direction at all. I have no idea why this would be cause for Abbott to be cast out of the presbytery. Well, I think what he wrote and what probably happened is a little bit different. Sounds like something more to that story. This trip appears to be a waste of time. Let's head back to the station. Lethargically, Ina went to return the book. We were on our way to the exit when a figure approached us. Hey, it's cool you guys have taken an interest in those old pieces of ecclesiastical bookkeeping. As I said, these things haven't been requested in decades. You must be history buffs, right? Ina eyed him up suspiciously. We're conducting investigative journalism into the Church of Abbott. Abbott? He went silent for a while, as though trying to remember something. I guess the report on them is pretty boring. You wouldn't say. She pulled me by the sleeve, signaling that we should leave. I don't know. I don't know if we should trust this guy. I remember that there was more to the story, though. There should be an addendum somewhere, some notes that were left out of the public report. With this, he appeared to have caught Ina's attention. They're pretty rare, though. I believe only 2 copies were ever printed. Where might we find these copies? Good question. He headed back to his desk where he spent some time browsing the catalog. One is in the private library of the Council of Reformed Churches. You could try to petition them, however. And the other? The other was sent to the Isle of Abbott in 1857. The town had the right to know why their church was being ejected from the presbytery. I feel like that's our best chance of getting that one, but it sounds like that was right before they had all that stuff going on in 1858, so I don't know about that one. If it hasn't been pruned from the collection, it should still be in the town's archives. Well, that's all we needed to know, dear man. You could have saved us a lot of time by telling this up front. I don't know, it was still interesting. You need the backstory before you can get, like, that piece of information, I feel like. And with these words, she was out the door. I thanked him briefly before running after her. Oh, okay, I didn't trust him, but I guess he did give us some useful piece of information. I don't know, I thought he was, like, trying to throw us off the trail or something, you know? Maybe he's in on something. On our way back to the station, we passed a small, indistinct-looking theater. Ina nudged me. Look, this is the nightclub I told you about, the one where the Marquise was spotted. Looks as grimy as ever. We were just in time to catch the 6 o'clock train. Throughout our return voyage, I could hear Ina mumbling to herself in excitement. Yeah, I mean, she was very excited about all the information we just got. Saturday came. I set to work. Everything went noticeably smoother than last time, and I was struck by the sad realization that I must be becoming an experienced paperboy. Also, we're part-time journalists, too. After my workday ended, I returned home for a shower and a change of clothes, after which I briefly spoke with my father. I brought up how he hadn't been home much lately, but he told me not to exaggerate, that it was actually I who was away all the time. Though I doubted that was the case, I sensed there was a little point in arguing. Or there was little point in arguing. How about that? Ooh, we're at a family diner. When I arrived at I know how to pronounce that and I can't think of it. Omophagia. Thank you. One of the few licensed establishments in town, Rika sat waiting on me. If you ever hear me saying thank you, it's probably to my wife, because Lord knows I couldn't do it without her. Are you hungry? We should order some side dishes. The fresh anchovies here are excellent. Okay, I don't know about that one. Rika, you're losing me right now. You're really pushing it. I nodded in agreement. What do you mean you not integrate? You like anchovies too? Don't give in to this. You can eat better food than anchovies, okay? I know they are good for you in some ways, but no. As I settled in, Rika sat staring at me, beaming in playful anticipation. She let out a restrained cough. So, I heard you've been hanging out with May again. No, I would never. Your spies are doing excellent work. What spies? Oh no, it's not like that. This time May told me herself. In fact, she hasn't stopped talking about you since last Tuesday. Oh gosh. May's a little different. I think she's in communication with some of these sea creatures that we're supposedly going to hear about at some point. Your misadventures among the megaliths and such. Gently, she had been brushing her fingers through her onyx hair, and the subtle, repetitive motions exuded a soothing calm, as though she was comforting a frightened creature. And you know, I think that may not be so bad. It's good for her to have someone to converse with on her level. What do you mean with on her level? She giggled. Oh, don't take it the wrong way. It's just that May's always been a bit of a loner. I can see why. Because she never attended regular school, she hasn't had the chance to make friends among her peers. I'm gonna be honest, I feel like all the girls in this game would be loners, because they're all super into the history of this island, and like that's probably not gonna fly with a lot of people. Now, Abe obviously is very sympathetic towards people who might be a little bit on the, I don't want to say weird side, but like they're a little bit out there. They have different interests, and I feel like a girl this age would have. How about we go with that? And I'm not saying they're bad girls. I'm just saying, or that they're weird girls. They're a little bit different. Okay, we'll go with that. Because she never attended regular school, she hasn't had a chance to make friends among her peers. But for you, as an outsider, it should be the same. Just let me know if she becomes a burden, okay? I nodded, not really sure if that point had already been reached. Wow, okay. It wasn't even me this time who was making fun of somebody. He's making fun of somebody. But tell me, how did your workday go? No big headline this week? I tried to feign offense at her statement. How dare you say such a thing? Didn't you read our exclusive report on the idiosyncratic migration patterns of the hairy hawker dragonfly? Wow, that sounds riveting. Absolutely interesting. I will. She turned her attention towards the laminated menu card, her bottom lip pouting in disinterest. The restaurant wasn't anything fancy, Italian in name only. Don't think that the headline will cause any trouble this time. He looked up at me. And that's good. We don't want trouble down here. Oh, trust me, this paper's all about trouble. That girl Ina, she really attracts trouble, you know? Yeah, that's kind of her goal with making this paper, I feel like, is to stir up trouble. Like that she loves it. I feel like she seeks it out. Thank you, Rika. You're showing a very smart, intelligent side to you, and I really appreciate that. We're on the same wavelength here. We have a gentleman in town who caused an embarrassment last year. Ina, of course, wrote all about it. Yeah, that sounds like Ina. Yeah, yeah. She flapped her hand rapidly as if shaking off a disgusting substance. To think he considers himself nobility. Oh, it's about that guy. You wouldn't be referring to the Marquise of Abbott, would you? Oh my, Ina has been mentoring you very well. Yeah, she doesn't stop talking about the history. Neither do you. You literally talk to me about history all the time. And I think May even likes history. Like, she's showing me the rocks, and May's a little more, like, philosophical, I think. She's, like, talking about how the rocks would outlast us, and I mean, that brings her comfort. She's, like, thinking about the deep things. And then Rika and Ina are just, oh, I love the history of Abbotsford. You know, there's so much cool stuff going on here. So, I guess May's a little bit different. The current Lord of the Isle is quite the character indeed, though I wouldn't say he deserves his title. From the late Middle Ages onward, his clan ruled the island. They owned most of the land over here, but only to collect taxes. They lived on the mainland, on a larger estate near the Hog. Hope I'm pronouncing that right, Hog. I have no idea how else to pronounce that. And to finance their lavish lifestyle among the nation's elite, they leached on the poor fishers and clergymen, there we go, of Abbott. But the lords never contributed anything of substance. She smiled. You can imagine how distraught they were when the decision fell to evacuate in 1958. With the fishers leaving Abbott, there was no source of income left. Okay, I have to ask, like, does she learn this in school? Like, is this part of the curriculum where you're learning about all this history? Like, who has all this memorized off the top of their head? Like, honestly, I mean, I know she's the pastor's daughter, and I feel like the pastor seems to be very involved with what's going on in this town or this. But still, like, this is an abnormal amount of information, okay? Is it weird to anybody else? The waitress came to bring our side dishes. To stay out of poverty, the clan sold about half of the island to the Church of Abbott, whose members would remain on the isle. The glory days were indisputably over. They had to live frugally in their castle, which began to crumble from neglect. Things changed, though, after the Declaration. She's literally been talking so long that the background changed. Like, it literally got darker in here. They made the background darker to symbolize that she's talking for a very long time, and I love it. In 1947, when the marsh polder fell dry, Marquise Louise of Abbott was one of the first to return to Abbotsford to lay claim on the part of the island his family was still legally entitled to. Is it Lewis or Louise? I think it's Lewis. Played an important role in developing Abbotsford in the 20th century. It was in his interest that the housing prices rose so that his family could collect rent again. He turned Abbotsford into a major agrarian hub, inviting farmers from all over the Low Countries to move here. He had a little boy with him at the time, young Leopold, a spoiled brat even at that age. She paused for a second to move the plate of fish in my direction. I can imagine the native population wasn't too happy about that. They weren't. Oh, I don't know what I just did. I just skipped through a whole bunch of dialogue and I have no idea if I can go back. We're gonna have to go through history. I am so sorry about that. I don't know how I managed to do that. Oh my gosh, how much did I skip? They weren't. Initially, there was a lot of Oh, can I go back? Gosh, how did I screw this up so bad? I am so sorry. I just skipped so much dialogue, and I have no idea how I did this. Okay, we're gonna go back. We're gonna read it. I promise. Okay, so somewhere around here, she paused for a second. The fish in my direction. I can imagine the native population wasn't too happy about that. They weren't initially. There was lots of strife as more and more farmers arrived. The newcomers began to outnumber the original islanders. Now, politically, Eyre had always maintained complete control of the town council. The islanders feared that farmers would form their own political movement that would be able to seize power. So how did that work out? Well, it wasn't all that bad. Since the evacuation of the church was the second largest landowner of the Isles, the inflated housing prices were good for us too. In the end, Marquise Lewis played an important role in reconciling the two sides. The agrarians were welcomed within Eyre as long as they agreed not to occupy more than half the seats in the council. This meant that the church would have contained control of the state of affairs in the island, while the newcomers still felt represented. So is that how the two factions within the town council arose? Eyre doesn't have any factions. All politicians operate in the best interests of the community. She winked. Yeah, that's what I keep hearing, but it seems like people are implying differently. Except for Leopold, of course, he's a blemish on our town. I wouldn't mind you writing another article on him. Let me know if you need any more information. I was beginning to realize that her loose tongue didn't necessarily stem from the wine or the amicable atmosphere. It was like the information she was disclosing was being carefully measured out. We sat in silence, eating fish while it gradually grew darker outside. Then she gently wiped her mouth on her napkin and looked at me. Is there anything else you'd like to know? Let's see. Is there anything else you'd like to tell me? We'll go with that. Oh, plenty. It's just that I like to stay one step ahead of Ina's games. While I was surprised at her sudden change of manner, I managed to remain collected. Yeah, she probably knows, like, Ina's just trying to get information out of her. It's getting very late. I have to be in church tomorrow by 9 a.m. She smiled a faraway smile. Can you imagine what it's like? A reclamation like that? Can you imagine how it would feel? You've been living your whole life on a secluded island, and then suddenly you witness the waters drop around you until all that's left is an endless wasteland of stinking marshes. The people here had spent their lives in the midst of a majestic sea, but in a period of less than a year, all that was reduced to a swamp, strewn with decaying fish corpses. I stared at her in silence. There have always been higher powers that decided over the people of Abbott, be it the lords, the national government, the presbytery of churches, but through their inhumane treatment of the islanders, they have sown their vines from which the grape of wrath would grow. It left them feeling futile and angry, helpless against the forces that may be. She sighed. For some reason, it strengthened their faith. They realized that they had to rely on a far higher power to deliver them from these tyrannical pharaohs. The native inhabitants of Abbott truly feel that they are God's people. Without asking, she impaled the last fish on her fork, bringing it to her mouth in one motion. After swallowing, she resumed her monologue. During the reclamation of the marsh polder, as the workmen built the long embankments that would keep the water out, incidentally, strange reports would emerge. I looked up for my drink. The men would experience an impromptu storm, a sudden succession of roaring of eddies that inhabited work for as long as they persisted. The thing was, these storms were highly localized. They would even occur on the most tranquil of days, when there wasn't a gust of wind in the air. I think they ascribed the phenomenon to ocean currents, sent wayward by the altered flow of the great rivers. However, that doesn't sound like it at all, what these workmen described. They spoke about raging tempests and huge waves. She took out her purse and placed a 50 on the table. Dang, how much money do you got? $50? Anyways, I had a great time, Abe. I'd love to do this again. Pretty much, once again, you managed to talk through our entire conversation. I pretty much just gave input when you asked for input. I didn't really say anything of my own free accord. And also, you didn't learn anything about me, and I hardly learned anything about you, which you said we were going to do today. Just want to point that out. I thanked her and told her I felt the same way. Then I reached for my wallet to pay for my share. Save your hard-earned money. My dad said he'd cover the tab. Dang, okay, you got daddy's money. I like it. Got a trust fund, baby. I grumbled appreciatively. I was awoken at 9 by church bells, after which I fell back asleep until I was awoken a second time by the bells for the noon service. Dang, you're sleeping in late, my guy. For a brief moment, my heart went out to Rika Cooper, who was likely expected to be present and presentable for all of today's services, until I dozed off yet again, to be awoken conclusively this time by mysterious ticking against my bedroom window. When I made it out of bed to open the curtains, I saw May standing outside dressed in head to toe in immaculate black. She told me. Rika finally told me. I poked and pestered throughout the service until she finally agreed to give me her address. I think she was embarrassed in front of the congregation. Yeah, why did she give you my address? I'm trying to sleep here. You know, it's past noon. You know, I'm just trying to enjoy my day. And you're pestering me. I tried throwing stones at each of the windows. Isn't your father home? You trying to break my windows? I grumbled a reply, still half asleep. It's Sunday afternoon. Let's go out on an adventure. Oh my gosh. You're ruining this. Have you had lunch yet? Don't worry, I took some peppermints from church. Oh yes, when I'm hungry, I love to eat peppermints. You know, May we need to protect May, okay? You know, there's always that character that's so precious and so sweet. You just need to protect them, and May is that character, okay? We need to protect our peppermint girl. In my groggy state, I tailed her through deserted streets. From her determined gait, I could tell she was leading me somewhere. It wasn't long before we left our drab suburban estate behind to enter a patch of brushwood that bordered the village. Gosh, this is some very interesting music. Not something I would expect from this. She stopped for a second to hand me some mints. They stood out chalky white against her jet black dress. Ah yes, this will sustain me. So what's with the depressing outfit? You had a funeral this morning? Oh no, we always dress in black for church. If there had been a funeral, they'd make me wear a veil. Giggling, she placed a mint in her mouth and took off again. Oh gosh, where are we going this time? On the other side of the trees lay a rolling meadow. It was not far behind that the landscape made a sudden, steep drop into the endless stretches of farmland that formed the remnants of the former sea. Hurry up! I could barely make out her golden hair in the blinding autumn sun. It wasn't much later that we reached what appeared to be the destination of our journey. You've led me to a pile of stones again. I really hope Abe is supposed to be as sarcastic as I make him out to be sometimes, because I love it. You've led me to a pile of stones again. The disappointment in his voice. Not just stones, a dolmen. Can't you tell by the way they're stacked? I have no idea what a dolmen is. Though smaller than the megalith she showed me last week, the stones had indeed been piled to form a tiny abode. Or abode, excuse me. Excitedly, she pulled my hand. Look, S, an S. What looks like it? I don't see an S. She was pointing at a crude S-shaped pictogram engraved into the surface along the rocks. Advertford spelling ace is at it again. Don't tease me like that. That's my favorite thing to do. What are you talking about? I won't stop. Figuring May had brought me here as a personal translator, I walked over to the obligatory tourist sign that stood a few yards from the archaeological site. Dolmen M4, commonly referred to as the S Dolmen, likely built as a megalith tomb by members of the Swifter Band culture, dated around 3500 BC. Ooh, so it's a tomb. I skimmed over some further text. A salient feature of M4 is the S-shaped petroglyph engraved on its southeastern side. Though resembling the letter S, it was carved long before the emergence of the Proto-Sinaitic alphabet. This rune likely depicts a house mark, a type of symbol that was used to identify clans during the late Neolithic. The discovery of petroglyphs inside megalith tombs from this period is not uncommon. The prominent placement of this S-shaped rune on the dolmen's outer exterior is unique in the Low Countries. May stood there, slinking down in disappointment. So the S is not an S. Oh, she's so precious. No, it's not an S. I'm sorry, May. The S that looks like an S is not an S. It's just a clan mark. I read on. These stones stood quite close to the shore when this was still an island. Do you know Abbotsford used to be an island? No. How do you not know? Everybody in this game knows that. I feel like, and I've been learning about it because nobody will shut up about it. She was looking at me all glassy-eyed. You didn't know? What do these people teach you? No. Not an island. Abbott was connected to the mainland once. Her voice was no more than a whisper. Huh? Oh gosh, that actually like kind of like scared me. I got goosebumps the way her eyes changed like that. I forget that she does this. And before I knew it, her eyes had turned a cloudy pearl. She had drifted off, a faint smile on her face. We were playing here on the beach, Sigurd and I. Is this supposed to be like in the past? Like I'm not talking about like 10 years ago. I'm talking about like hundreds of years ago. I had 4 younger brothers at first, but 3 of them died in infancy. Sigurd survived, though. Sigurd was the strongest. We dragged a fallen tree far into the water that day to pretend it was a sea monster. I already knew he would be leaving soon. I remember his hair, how it shone bright in the sun on the last summer day. Her expression darkened. Sigurd, I prayed so long for your return. I would pray here by the stones. I wonder if she's like being possessed by like one of her ancestors or something. I prayed to the Chthonic gods, who dwell through immeasurable depths. Sigurd was sent away to live with an allied tribe. It was a ritual we'd perform whenever an eldest son turned 7. It was meant to strengthen regional bonds and to prevent madness. Sigurd, I prayed so many nights. After that, May remained silent for a very long time. It wasn't until the sun began to set that the color in her eyes returned. During that moment, she looked vulnerable, helpless, as though she couldn't begin to fathom the intricacies of that episode, the mysterious absence that had come over her. I had helped her to her feet, supporting her as we slowly, wordlessly commenced our journey home. Not looking to run into anyone in town, we took the long route home, looking around the perimeter of the former island. After a while, I became aware of May's gentle humming in my ear, and by the time we had made it to her parents' farm, she appeared to have returned to good spirits. Thank you for bringing me home, Abe. I had a great time at the shore. Yeah, and you scared the frick out of me. Though I was caught off guard at the time, I was happy to see that she had regained her cheer. I like how Abe just totally ignores it. He's like, that's not weird at all. It's just normal stuff for your eye color to change, and you just talk about events in the past that don't even seem like they're from this era. You want to come to the lake with me someday? The water should still be warm, like summer. She appeared almost drunk with fatigue. Will you come with me? Abe? The lake is so big, like an ocean almost. Do I want to go with her to the lake? I feel like that's where you'd really like see something interesting happen. So we'll say I'd love to. Thank you, Sigurd. Are we are we not mentioning that? Okay. Cheerfully, I bade her goodbye and head back towards town. Police sirens swelled in the distance as I drew closer to town. Okay, what's going on here? I followed them into Main Street, where I was nearly knocked down by a small dark figure. There you are, finally! We need as many reporters on the scene as possible. Scene? Didn't you read my messages? There's been an attack on Karen Voorhees' house. Well, okay, that was interesting. I got perfect with her again. I don't understand. I just chose the most sarcastic options. Oh, what? Really? So I completed it all, huh? Thank you for playing the early access version of Deluge. Threnody of Crashing Waves. The full version is planned for spring/summer 2022. We'd love to hear your thoughts on the game. You can contact us or by the Steam Community Hub. Try to check the Abbott section in the menu. What the frick? I was getting into this game. What do you mean that's the end? I won't accept this. You know, you need to release the rest of the game right now. I don't care if it's done. I need to know what happens, because I was actually getting invested in that. But I don't know. This is an interesting game. I'll say that. I think it's actually pretty good. I'm actually enjoying it. We're gonna have to see how it is once it actually comes out, because obviously there's gonna be what, like 6 different endings. I'm curious where it's going. I like how it's been presented so far. I'm hoping at that point that I just got to, that's where you'll kind of branch off into the different endings, just so you keep it shorter. Like, I really like games that are like too crazy long, and that provide more content in the endings rather than the main story. But overall, I'm really enjoying this game. I'm excited for it to come out. I guess it's gonna be coming out this spring, so we gotta wait a few more months. But I mean, what's here is really good. I wish the characters would actually talk about something other than the island sometimes, but you know, that's okay. That's a part of the game. But I like the characters; they're interesting. I definitely want to know more about the Lovecraftian part. We've gotten like a crumb of it when I feel like there's a whole like cake or a pie or something, you know. And I'm just trying to find where that is. And hopefully, once the game's released, we're gonna get all that. But so far we're getting that crumb, and the crumb tastes really good. I want more of it. So I'm gonna end it here. That was Deluge. I really like this game, so make sure to keep it on your radar. I think it's really good. So I'm gonna end it here, and I'll see you guys whenever this game ends up coming out.